Well, let's go ahead and begin. Today we have another presenter. We got our head coach of our baseball team, Todd Reller, this year. You guys will have quite a few questions, I hope. But Todd has been here. Todd has been almost a lifetime here. He has played here, he's left, he's come back as an assistant, and now as the head coach. And I'm going to let him tell a little bit more about his story and how he got where he is and why he's here and all that kind of stuff, because it's better if you're here firsthand. Okay, as we're going along, you do have your questions. If you see something, need something else asked, write it down, take notes on that. You guys know the way on this one. We got a paper during the week. Okay? With no further ado, Coach Todd Reller, please give it up for Coach. All yours.
I appreciate you guys having me come talk. My story a little bit. So grew up in Columbia, Missouri, about 5 minutes from the University of Missouri. Spent my life there. When I was going through high school baseball and whatnot, I played for an organization called the Kansas City Sluggers. They had a bunch of coaches there that ended up eventually coming here and coaching here. One was named Brian Schmidt, he was the head coach. Shane Wedd was the hitting coach, and Eric Thompson was the pitching coach. And I worked with Shane all growing up. He was my personal lessons guy for catching and hitting, all that kind of stuff. My brother played for Coach Schmidt. I was around Coach Thompson a lot, and when Coach Schmidt got the head coaching job here, it was something that I had a lot of interest in coming to play here at Pratt Community College. I was actually choosing between here and Hutchinson Community College. I think my dad, as he put it when I took the visit here and things like that, we were taking a visit to eliminate Pratt because he wanted me to go to Hutch. He thought it was going to be a better fit and all that kind of stuff. And was actually surprised with everything that Schmitty and Shane and ET were doing here with how they were building the program and everything, that it eventually became the right fit for me. And so I chose this over Hutch, which are two very different programs and very different schools, but it's the best decision I ever made. It's something that I sat in the chairs that you guys sat in, had I think Roy Clark at 8 a.m. and college algebra in here, and got to experience that. It's something that, it's part of the reason why I've been here for so long. This is my 12th year overall. I got done playing here for 2 years. I went to a year at Emporia State and played there as a junior, and then I transferred to Central Missouri and played at the University of Central Missouri for my senior year with, my brother was actually the pitching coach at Central, and so I got to go spend a year playing for him and be around him. And then when I got done playing, I immediately picked up the phone and called. Eric Thompson was the head coach at that point. He took over, and I came back here to be an assistant in the fall of 2014. And so then I've been here since then. Spent 6.5 years as the hitting coach, recruiting coordinator, worked with outfielders and catchers and infielders, and I've done it all in terms of that kind of stuff. And then when he resigned in, it would have been November of 2020. They made me the interim coach for about a month and a half, and then I got the head coaching job, the full head coaching job after that. And got to spend, I've been the head coach since spring of 2021, which was a very interesting year where I got to do first time head coach, trying to figure out all that, and also got to do COVID screening and COVID tests and isolation and all that kind of stuff on top of it. It was a pretty fun trial by fire, basically, trying to figure out how to deal with all that and also figure out how to be the coach the first time. So spent the last however many years being the head coach. It's something that, like I said, the best decision I ever made was to come to school here. I know it's, like I said, I've been in your shoes, going to classes. There's not a lot to do in town here and things like that, but you don't know you're in the good old days until you are out of the good old days, basically. And it's something that the people I got to be around here, the experiences I got to have here, it's something that I wouldn't trade for anything, and I still look back on it. I still talk to a bunch of the guys I played with here, and it's something that I wish, like I said, we try to help our guys enjoy as much as we can, but enjoy the time you guys have here, because it might be boring to sit in those seats, but you don't get that time back as soon as it's over. You don't get to be in the dorms anymore, you don't get to do that kind of stuff, and it's the best experience I ever had. That's why I still coach here and work here, and I enjoy this place as much as possible. So that's kind of my story and background. I know you guys have a lot of questions on those sheets. I got to see some of them. So is there anything else you want to know before I get into questions, I guess?
I think I'll let the questions go and whatever evolves. Go ahead with questions.
Who wants it first? Go for it.
How do you decide your lineup for games?
It's a combination of a number of things. We are looking at numbers and things like that. There are some underlying numbers that I like to look at. I don't think just pure batting average and things like that are an easy indicator. We try to look at consistency. We try to look at contact rates, hard contact rates. There's stuff that we're keeping track of that you wouldn't see on a stat sheet. A lot of the stuff is based on performance, and there is, like I said, some performance numbers that don't pop up on when you pull up our stats online, things like that. There might be a kid hitting 215, but he's taking better at-bats, more consistent at-bats, helping drive in runs, get on base, hitting with a little more power, things like that. Playing good defense, too. I think that's another big piece of here of pitching defense won a lot of games, especially if we got the wind blowing in at our park, which you guys know how hard the wind blows here. So it's a lot of that kind of stuff. There is an aspect, it's not, I always talk about it's like a pie chart, the biggest aspects of performance and how they're doing it, things like that, but there are pieces to what are their grades like, are they working hard off the field, is their effort focused right, are they about the team? There are pieces of the pie in terms of that kind of stuff where I've had to make decisions that we're not gonna play that person, we're not gonna travel that person because they're about the wrong things, whether that's selfish reasons, lack of effort or focus or whatever it is. Those are big aspects to me, and so it's not the biggest piece of the pie chart, but it has made decisions in the past where I'm just not gonna play somebody because they're not doing the right things too. So, but like I said, you kind of give everybody opportunities to kind of see what they can do on the field, and then you kind of start to narrow down that lineup and those rotations as the year goes on, and then you kind of pick out of that group from there. Good question. Go for it.
What was the typical game day?
Our guys are out of class typically at home. They're out of class about 9:30. We're on the field at 10, taking BP from about 10:30 to 11:15 or so. Send them to go eat the calf, come back at noon, start doing warm up again to get ready for infield, outfield stuff before the game. And then we play at 1 o'clock and play doubleheader, which some doubleheaders have gotten done at like 5, and when we played like Garden City and some of those doubleheaders, those got done at I think like 8:30. So it could just depend on the length of the game and stuff like that. But you know, if they don't have class at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday, Thursday that we typically play on stuff, we're asking them to go hit the indoor before, asking them to take extra swings, prepare themselves. We kind of talk about with them, it's not about what you want, it's about what you're willing to do. And so if you're not willing to go prepare yourself the way you need to be ready for the game, then the stuff you want to come later, the success and next level and stuff like that, that's not a guarantee either. So there's game days are long and extensive, so especially during the season, we try to back off practices a little bit so that they can have the right kind of energy to go from 9:30 to 7 o'clock at night when our games get done, basically. Yep.
Why do you recruit so many guys?
The school asked me to, as part of it. So every program here has roster numbers that they have to hit. For us, it's 40. I don't mind that number. There's some coaches that want to have smaller numbers. I don't want it to be much above 40 because that is hard to work with all those guys and give them the attention they need. I think the biggest thing, and that when players come here, they want to develop, and to develop, you got to have one-on-one attention. And so if you're dealing with 50, 60, 70 guys with 3 or 4 coaches, that's just too many per coach to be able to give them the attention they want. But at about 40 or so, it allows us to compete. I'm a big believer in competition during practice. I think it brings out the best in players. I think it helps them captivate their attention a little bit. It's something that we want them to feel pressure too. So we try to avoid just taking DP or just bunts or just working on stuff. We try to create competition. Once we teach them stuff, we want them to compete with everything they do. So we'll split them up into 2 teams and find a way to add a stress level that's going to be similar to games for them. So having 40 allows us to split up our pitchers, split up our hitters, have 20 per team basically, and have enough to go do what we need to do. It's also one of those things that baseball is it's just not a natural sport for the body. Arms break down because the throwing motion is not it's not what your arm's supposed to do. So in softball, the rotation works with the ball socket joint and everything like that, so you can throw more pitches without it actually tearing up your arm. For a pitcher to bring his arm back and things like that, it puts stress on the elbow that your arm's not supposed to actually have. That's why there's so many pitching injuries and things like that. So having enough pitchers, having enough hitters with all the stress level they're gonna have throughout the season, playing 56 games, it just helps us be able to have the depth to be able to survive the season, but also be good during the season. I was talking about Mr. Jackson about it before of, we had 2 of our best pitchers out this week, and it's just something that you gotta deal with because it's gonna happen at some point. So the number of guys is required by the school, but also gives us the depth that we need to be able to do what we need to do. Yep.
As a former catcher, how do you develop leadership and communication skills with players?
It's difficult. I think it's trying to, one, help your guys be comfortable with each other. We want to be able to, we talk about brotherhood. It's something that I think you want guys to feel comfortable being able to talk to others, share difficult messages, do that kind of stuff. And I think you have to have a respect level between players to be able to do that. It's not easy to share that kind of stuff. I think everybody can be friends and be close and do that. I think it's another one to have the kind of relationship to say, hey, you're not working like you should, or hey, your mentality is not right. I mean, we had 2 pitchers, I don't want to say getting after each other this weekend, but we had one pitcher that was complaining about a teammate, and another guy put him in his place, and that's stuff that needs to happen. That's true leadership of, it's not just saying that you're a captain or saying that you're a leader on the team, it's actually acting like it. And so you encourage people to do that. I think for 18, 19, 20-year-olds, that's a difficult thing to do in terms of finding your voice and finding the right kind of voice. I know when I was voted a team captain when I played here, and it's something that I thought leadership was one thing and it could have been another. I wanted my voice to be the loudest in the room. I wanted my voice to carry the most weight in terms of that kind of stuff. And so I was a yeller, and I don't think that's true leadership all the time. There's times for it. There's intensity levels that could be created by it, but I think you're trying to get people to have a good head on their shoulders, share the right messages, and share difficult messages at times. But it's just something that's difficult to do. I try to share my experience as much as I can. I think the biggest thing I've learned from other coaches and things that I've read and learned and things like that is just being authentic. Of if I'm my true self and sharing my true feelings and talking about that kind of stuff and my experiences, it tends to carry more weight with players than if I'm just trying to tell them what I think or just telling them that I'm the smartest in the room or whatever it is. I think being authentic and real helps your players understand where you're coming from, and I think it's going to make them better people because of it too. Yep.
How do you balance coaching and your personal life?
When I got a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old at home, it is not very easy. They are full-time jobs, full-time. They're unbelievably amazing, and they get to come to practice with me sometimes and things like that to help balance it. It's just keeping your priorities in line. As much as I love this place and this program, I'll do anything for it. My family comes first. That's always going to be first in line. It wasn't easy for me last year, but I had a baby during the season. I missed games, I missed practices, I took time off. I trusted my assistants. Anybody who knows me knows my skin was crawling to do that, and it wasn't easy to do, but my wife and kids came first, and that's something that you try to keep that in line. And so, they understand the time requirements. My wife's amazing. She helps keep the house in order. She helps keep the kids in order. I try to find every possible way I can to make sure I help her and things like that. But even this last week, You know, we were in Colby, Kansas on Friday night, played Saturday, had a rain delay, played the next day. She wasn't really expecting to have the kids by herself for 3 days or whatever it is, but, you know, she handled it, and then I made sure I had plenty of time for them yesterday to spend time, take them more off her plate, things like that. If I gotta put more on my assistants to be able to handle some of that kind of stuff so I can make sure my house is in order, you know, that's, I think, the biggest thing. But it's just understanding the priorities. You know, when I was a young coach, I thought, you know, the first priority was this program and coaching and making sure I did everything right. And I think I made some bad decisions because of that, and I put this ahead of what it should have been. And now that I'm a little older, more mature, and like I said, it's knowing what comes first. And those three at home are the first ones on my priority list. So, yeah.
What do you want your athletes to learn from you?
That's a tough question. I mean, I don't know if there's one thing. You know, I think the biggest thing for me I want them to, you know, talk about priorities, understand what a good father and husband looks like, because again, that's gonna be something that's probably in their future. Same thing, baseball's gonna end at some point. The biggest thing we're pushing on, and pushing to drive all of our players to do is have the right work ethic and drive to be successful. And that can be in school, work, personal life, whatever it is, willing to do what it takes. And you know, I think there's some of that they're figured out as they play, but it helps carry over whenever they get out of their playing career too. So we've had a lot of great people and players come through this program, and there's only one playing pro ball. So he's in the Dodgers organization, hopefully getting up into the major leagues this year, but that's 1 out of 12 years. So there's a pretty good chance that they're not going to get that opportunity, and so they need to be prepared for that. And so making sure they have the right work ethic and know what their future plans can look like and what it's going to be, I think that's the biggest thing I'm trying to help them understand before they leave here, of what it's going to take to be successful after this place, not just here. So, good question. Good.
How do you prepare for like your next opponent?
Say that again.
How do you prepare for your next opponent?
So we have a program called Synergy. It's a camera system that we take video of all of our games. We send it off to the company Synergy. They chop it up into individual clips of each pitch. There's a bunch of other teams in our conference that actually use it as well. And so we spend countless hours scouting them, watching their hitters, watching their pitchers, putting together scouting reports. We spend about an hour to an hour and a half with our players on Wednesday nights before series, sharing that information with them. What pitchers are going to look like, we show them the video, we talk about what our plan of attack will be for certain hitters that will be important, and things like that. You know, we try to look at what the stats tell us, you know, if they like to sack bunt, if they like to steal, if there's high level hitters that we're going to have to be careful with, if they run certain kind of pickoffs, things like that. Like today, we have Dodge City this week. They like to run. They can swing it a little bit. So our catchers are going to go make sure they work on their transitions behind the plate, make sure that they're throwing it well, because they're going to have a good throwing weekend. They're going to have to be able to put the baseball where it needs to and things like that. We'll probably run through our holds and picks with our pitchers to make sure that they are prepared to stop the run game on the mound and things like that. So we use the fall to teach all of our systems, go through our bunt defense, go through our cuts and relays, go through our first and thirds, kind of teach all of our systems and what it looks like. We then go into the springtime and use those reviews based off what the opponent's going to do like that week. And so if they're a high bunting team, if they like to hit and run, if they just sit back and hit, whatever it is, you know, we try to prepare our defense with certain things that week. We don't have to go over everything, we just need to go over the important stuff. And so we try to spend plenty of time as coaches. That's probably what I get to do for the next 3 or 4 hours after this, is go watch some hitters for Dodge City, and start to kind of put together what our plan of attack will be, and then try to adjust that throughout the series. But yeah, it's time consuming. For us 3 coaches, I mean, we probably spend 8 to 10 hours watching video and things like that, just putting together a lot of information. Because if we're going to ask a lot of our players of, hey, go hit extra, prepare yourself, it's about what you want, what you're willing to do, not what you want, then we got to be able to prepare them too. And if that means extra time for us, I've had 2 kids sitting on my lap watching a laptop, watching video at home and things like that, and they understand what's going on. So it's trying to make sure we're putting the investment into them as much as we can to prepare them for each series too. Yep.
What was your biggest adjustment from going from assistant coach to head coach?
Is time consuming doing a lot of the other stuff. And there's days I miss being an assistant coach of you're worried about one position group, you're focused on them. You know, if I was the hitting coach still, I would be running hitting groups, I'd be focused on the defense, I'd be just watching the pitchers for Dodge City this week. With me being the head coach, I have to do travel, practice schedules, check academics, make sure guys are going to class. I have to handle scholarship budgets and financial budgets and things like that. There's just a lot of other aspects, and then on top of that, I need to probably watch both sides of the baseball. I need to watch all of Dodge's pitchers, and I need to watch all of Dodge's hitters, and I need to know what's going on with all that kind of stuff. It means you need to be a better delegator. I've had to learn how to do that. I used to want to be involved in every single little thing, and I have to hire assistants that can handle stuff on their own. And so instead of, I won't say micromanaging, but being involved in every aspect of it where I just coach, and that's the biggest thing for me, I've had to make sure that I have to do this, this, and this. I have to talk to this recruit. I'm handling this visit. I have to go sit in this meeting with Lynette Depew and Linda Landerman and things like that, talking about scholarship budget or financial budget or whatever it is. So I have to be able to trust my assistants to be able to run the pitching, run the hitting on a day-to-day basis and do that kind of stuff. So it was a big adjustment for me when I first took over as head coach. I wanted to be involved in everything. I still wanted to run stuff. I have to kind of, I think they call it, be more of a CEO. You have to look over everything without being in charge of it as much. And it is an adjustment. Like I said, there's some days that I love being the head coach, and there's days that I wish I could go back to being an assistant hitting coach or kind of do those kind of things and take some of the stuff off my plate. Yep.
How competitive is the conference?
Very competitive. I think it's one of those things, we're gonna be pretty biased being up here. I played in it, I've coached in it for a long time. There's a lot of people that know what it's like. The thing I use, I had a good buddy that coached at Dodge City a couple years ago. He's now down at Tyler, Texas Junior College. And people have always said the Texas Junior College League is one of the best in the nation. He talks about the top to bottom depth up here is better than down there. There's a lot of good teams, playing Tyler and McLennan and Blinn, and there's national champions and there's top 10 teams in the nation, things like that. But he just talks about, 1 through 9 on our side on the west that he got to experience for 6 or 7 years. He talks about how deep it is, that the 9 team can be better than the 2 team on the weekend, things like that. It's just, the depth is unreal. It's highly competitive. It's difficult. They play a handful of teams from up here in Kansas this year, and I don't think they have a winning record against them, and they're a top 25 team in the nation. So it's like every sport here. I don't think there's a bad sport in terms of the competitive level of softball, basketball, and wrestling, and we don't compete in football, but flag football and everything like that. I just don't think there's an easy conference or easy sport in this conference. It's highly competitive. There's so many junior colleges in the same place. They're all competing at a high level, and it's not easy to get the coach here. So. Yep.
How do you handle team discipline conflicts?
It was one of the biggest things I felt like I wanted to change when I took over. When I was assistant coach, a lot of that stuff is out of my hands, but I always dreamed of being a head coach, dreamed of being a head coach here, and so there'd be things that I would kind of think about as I was an assistant. I thought our head coach did a good job, but there were some times in discipline I thought he was a little biased with stuff. One of the things I implemented when I first took over was I created a punishment guidelines list. Basically, I didn't want it to be biased. If you got in trouble, there were caveats that, if there's more severe repercussions needed, we could do that. But if you're the best player on the team or the worst player on the team, favorite player on the team or least favorite player on the team, whatever, I didn't want it to be a different punishment for each person. So, you know, we had, I think, quite a few guys at a party a couple weeks ago. They all did the same punishment. They all got to go do conditioning and cleaning and things like that. You know, I listed out and have them sign it at the beginning of the year, and it talks about, you know, if you do this, here's your repercussions. You do this, here's your repercussions. You know, like I said, there are caveats in there that, hey, if you get caught with alcohol and you're a jerk to Charles or the security guard, whoever it may be, you know, we can make that a more severe repercussion. If you lie to me about it, you know, there could be a more severe repercussion. If there's issues beyond just getting in trouble, you know, we can kind of increase it if we need to and things like that. We've done that. But it tries to take it out of my hands of basically of, hey, you made a bad decision, you screwed up, here's your consequences. And that way I'm not, like I said, it's not seen as being biased. It's not me trying to come up with something on the fly. We've come up with, I believe they call it the triangle of death. It's not a very fun 2 hours that they get to spend out there with me, but they get in trouble doing something like that, they're gonna go to the triangle of death, and once they get done with it, they got a few things they're gonna do after that, and then it's pretty quick. I'm not gonna have issues with them and things like that. So, as much as I told you guys I was here, I got in trouble drinking in the dorms, had good old Michael, remember Mario, caught me in the dorms, doing some stupid stuff. Coach Schmidt got to spend 5 mornings with me at 6 a.m. doing stuff, and got to pay my price basically for my bad decision. So, I don't judge, I don't have an issue. I know it's college, I know you guys are gonna make good decisions and bad decisions, but I think everybody just understands that there's gonna be repercussions for those consequences. So, same thing for missing class, same thing for, you know, if we have an issue with drugs, which we haven't had for a long time, you know, there's stuff like that that, you know, we have in place that they understand exactly what's gonna be expected of them. So if they make that bad decision, they get caught, own up to it, take your punishment, and then move on from there and make a better decision in the future. Yep.
Where do you mostly go to recruit your kids?
So our largest pieces of our roster this year, and I think probably moving forward, we have Kansas kids, same thing, there's a little bit of a requirement of, you know, if you guys don't know, community colleges get money from the state for every Kansas kid that we bring in. So our school wants Kansas kids on our roster. That's why junior colleges are created, is to service their area basically. And so we were created to service the surrounding counties, a little bit of Wichita, stuff like that. So they want kids from those areas to come to school here. So we do have a large number of Kansas kids. I think we have 10 or 11, maybe 12 on our team right now. We also recruit Texas very heavy. We've spent a lot of time in the Dallas area. You can get some kids out of San Antonio, Houston, and a few other places like that. But we spend a lot of time in Texas during the summertime recruiting. It's high-level baseball. They get to play year-round. We have good Kansas kids and good Texas kids, but the Texas kids are very high level in terms of what they're able to do. And so I think we have about 15 Texas kids on our team this year. The other big one is Canadians. For whatever reason, over the years, Canada has really loved this conference. And so if we tell them that we play in the Jayhawk Conference, they want to come play here. They like to come play here. And so I think we have 10 Canadians on our team right now. I think next year we're going to have, I think it's 13 or 14 Canadians. And it's something that we try to push that. We have a few kids random, you know, we're open to finding kids anywhere if they're good players. So we have, I think it's 5 from Missouri, and then we have 1 kid from Arkansas, it's from the Louisville area actually. And so, you know, they always talk about, you know, having your recruiting niche, and I think the biggest thing, and we've